I'm going to read three quite short stories. It'll fall under 15 minutes. And this first one is called On the Moment of Conception. The Paris Review did not like it. Not even a little bit. But I hope you guys do. We wanted a child, but no child came. When Joan suggested the procedure, I wasn't so sure. It didn't seem natural. She said, "What's not natural is that we haven't made a child when we both want it so badly that we dream about it every night." My nightly dream featured a field lined with branches, dogs running ahead. Their feet pounded the earth, and the magnet pulled my body along behind them. To anyone watching, I would look like the last dog in a line of dogs, disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, Joan dreamed, apparently, that she walked through a hallway of carriages, each carriage filled with sand. When she opened the carriage door, the sand poured around her feet. She had this dream every night and would wake crying if she had a chance to touch the sand, which she described as being very cold. She did not cry from sadness, she claimed. We sat up in bed sharing a bowl of chocolate pudding in the nude. We stayed up late in those warm, early summer days. We had made a life, but not a child. In the center of our home was our bedroom, and in the center of our bedroom was a wide, extravagant bed, which we had commissioned from a local craft person. A stepladder was mounted to each side. Since the bed had been installed, neither of us wanted to climb down, and we would take our meals there. Joan dipped her spoon into pudding. They're just eating pudding. She said, "I've been thinking about this. It would be nice if you would alert me when you are thinking of things like this," I said. "This is your alert," she said. "I have the supplies ready." She told me of certain creatures in the ocean who undergo this procedure naturally. "You might as well show me the supplies," she said. She collapsed onto her naked stomach and scooted toward the stepladder. She was always a handsome woman and had only grown more striking with the sprouting of wiry gray hairs, each reminding me of a sensitive antenna tuned to something I could not see. I recently discovered a gray, almost white hair jutting proudly out of her mons pubis. The other hair seemed to show the white hair some amount of respect curling below. Y'all know. Joan padded to her closet and returned with a shoebox. She placed it at the foot of the bed, out of reach, before mounting the stepladder again. At the top of the ladder, she got on her belly and scrambled up, rolling toward the center of the bed and patting the mussed sheets around her. She collected the box, flipped open the lid, and pushed it toward me. Inside the box were half-moon-shaped sewing needles, a thick coiled thread, a hunting knife, and a vial of white powder atop a folded plastic sheet. "You found my father's hunting knife," I said. "It wasn't lost," she said, picking it up. "It was encased in its leather sheath, which bore stamped scenes of my father's shepherding history in Wales." "This would mean something to me," she said. "And what's more," she said, "I think this really might work." She was coaxing me into tumescence through the sheet. I held her hand with both my own. "It involves some sacrifice for both of us," she said. She withdrew her hand and took the plastic sheet from the box, spreading it over the comforter. She lay down on the plastic and beckoned to me. This is a woman who lied her way through her education, forging her transcripts to first get an internship she wanted and then a job. She lied to her mother, telling her we had moved to Boston, and then continued to make this claim in phone calls for the next 5 years. She lied at parties, while we were still invited to parties. She would open her mouth to tell a story about a hiking trip through the Andes, and even old friends would turn and walk away. I have never heard her tell one true fact in her life, and at that moment I didn't believe her. I did not believe her. But marriage is built on trust, not belief. I didn't believe that the plan would work, but I trusted her fully. Here we go. I entered her with some difficulty, and we held there looking into each other's eyes while she readied her hand. She touched my hip, kissed my shoulder. When I was positioned properly inside her, she grasped my member with a firm hand and removed it at the base. The knife's clean cut, blinding me as if it had severed my optical nerve. Sorry, I collapsed and felt pressure from her hands holding something as if to my body, a cloth, and upon regaining my vision, saw her injecting herself with a compound, and upon waking sometime later, saw her sewing her bloody sex closed, my own still inside. With a hooked suture needle, the look on her face one of pure concentration. My body was already closed and cleaned, healing under a fresh bandage. We woke, pale and thirsty, the plastic sheet sticking to our bodies. Joan's breathing stuttered as she moved her head in the crook of my shoulder, and then she was quiet. There were things that we would do for one another, sacrifices we would make, and the proof was now before us, as plain as an hour in the day. It was a beautiful morning or afternoon. Thank you. Here's one called The Swan as Metaphor for Love. A swan's foot, like a duck, is a webbed claw. In traversing swan shit and mud, the claws gunk up and reek. Nobody in the history of the world, save another swan, has licked a swan foot while that foot was still attached to the swan. The feet resemble rabid bats in their sickly color and texture. Moving north on the swan's undercarriage, one will find an eroded civilization of swan shit and pond scum. This is a banal phrase, pond scum. One that is easily ignored, but look closer, take a closer look. Swans eat grasses, sedges, and pondweed, each teeming with murk. The birds will also eat insects, snails, and a fresh shrimp if they're near one. Pond scum is more of the same. Swan shit, fish shit, frog shit, half a can of beer poured by some fuck teenager, plastic, photosynthetic residue, algae, permanent bubble, hexagon patch freed from its soccer ball, anthropod corpse, all attached to the swan in its idiot float in its stagnant little island sea. Swans eat tadpoles. A swan will slurp up entire schools of larval amphibians, process them, and shit them out. And sometimes then it will sit in the shit or walk through it, and here we are. Anyone who claims that a swan is a majestic and noble creature has never seen a swan up close or smelled its bacterial purge. Swans will attack you if you are nearing their young or their nest, if you are trying to have a conversation with their mate. They have jagged points in their beak, which resemble teeth, but more closely resemble a plumber's saw, which plumbers call a tiny Tim. If you try to take a swan's picture, he will strike at you with his beak. Too much attention enranges a swan. The swan has a long neck, and he will strike at you. The swan will bite you and tear your flesh. Swans mate for life, which is maybe 10 or 15 years. Someone found a swan once that was 24 years old, and probably it was mating for life, which everyone made a big deal out of, even though the swan was not old enough to rent a car. The swan wasn't old enough to silently hyperventilate in bed. The swan didn't have a bed. The swan was too stupid to have a bed, and if it did, it would fill the bed with swan shit. That's all for today about swans. Okay, then short. All right, this one's called Date Night. Ow! Oh, thank you. Date night. The woman and man are on a date. It is a date! The woman rubs a lipstick print off her water glass. The man turns his butter knife over and 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 over. Everyone has to pee. What's the deal with dates? The man excuses himself to go pee. At the table, the woman scratches her forearm a little too hard, and a slice of skin peels up with her fingernail. She tries to smooth it back, but it doesn't go even when she presses her palm to it. It curls around itself like a pencil shaving. The woman is dismayed. She holds her hands in her lap when the man returns from the bathroom. The man pulls back his chair and sits heavily. When the woman sees him, she covers her mouth to stop her laughter. The man must have washed his face too hard in the sink because his left eye and cheekbone are stretching apart. Bits of paper towel stick to his cheek. He has wiped off his face. He observes her mirth with a skewed, sullen glare until she shows him the skin of her forearm. Then he laughs. He uses his butter knife to scrape up a portion of his own skin to match hers. She plucks at her cheekbone until it forms a sharp point. He twists his thumb around. It pops into his palm and he overhands it into the kitchen. The woman bares her breasts and flicks her nipples off her body like flies on a summer day. They land on the floor, and a waiter catches one under his heel and slips across the tile. The other patrons have been watching the central pair. Underneath the couple's skin, a clear paneling emerges, a carapace, a subcutaneous shell. Their bodies are mannequins, holding skin and clothing and color. Here's the deal, y'all. There is a layer of skin, do you see what I'm saying? And then underneath that, you can't get in there. A wild look enters all eyes. Individuals wipe flesh off one another with napkins soaked in wine. A mother gnaws her child in its booster seat. One man lifts his ruddy toupee to reveal a few pathetic strands of glue-coated hair, blonde in color, which he swipes off in one motion and stuffs down his shirt front. A woman, watching this man, flicks open his button fly, and the hair scatters like dandelion feathers. The man howls, and the woman rips his dick off and drops it into a bowl of soup. What's the deal with soup? Tablecloths are pulled from tables, and the tables themselves are scrubbed of their color. A waiter dumps a tray of meat onto the floor, shines the tray on his ass, and wears it as a breastplate to go into battle with the cook, a stout man with a blistered face. The cook wipes himself clean to reveal a featureless figure dripping with rage and shame. He tips a boiling pot of pasta water onto the waiter, who himself is freed from ears, hair, dermis, and his white waiter's gloves, which he had once bleached every night, and which now gunk up the kitchen drain along with the drippings from a holiday ham and a full set of teeth. The room contracts. A woman screams until a child slips a dessert spoon under a muscle in her neck and flings her larynx to the floor, at which point the woman grasps both breasts, rips them from her body, and applies them to her throat. The breasts produce twin howling whales, which consume a grown man whole. Flesh is siphoned into a bowl and poured without discrimination into a freestanding grandfather clock, which is set on fire and rolled into the street. This is no sepsis, no sucker heart, no blind agony. There rises a rallying cry of mutual recognition. This is a celebration. Each piece of internal armor on each individual is so thick with shine that even light from the recent past and future finds a way to burst forth, shattering across shattering glass, covering all in a blinding, healing, bleeding, screaming light. Because that's what life is, you assholes. That's what it means to be alive. Thanks.